You're here today for a conversation with Ms. Susan Burton, moderated by Ms. Lisa Teasley. Following the tragic death of her 5-year-old son, Susan's world collapsed. Her loss snapped the final tether of resilience burdened by a past of pain and trauma. She descended into an emotional abyss of darkness and despair, yet was not offered the resources needed to heal. Without support, she turned to drugs and alcohol, which led to nearly 20 years revolving through cycles of incarceration. Drawing on her personal experience, she founded a new way of life in 1998, dedicated her life to helping others break the cycle of incarceration. A New Way of Life provides resources including housing, case management, employment, legal services, leadership development, and community organizing on behalf of and with people who struggle to rebuild their lives after incarceration. Her memoir, Becoming Miss Burton, From Prison to Recovery to Leading the Fight for Incarcerated Women, was published in May of 2017. Additionally, Ms. Burton is a winner of the prestigious AARP Purpose Prize, a CNN Top 10 Hero, a Soros Justice Fellow, a Women's Policy Institute Fellow at the California Wellness Foundation, and has just been awarded the NAACP Image Award for 2018. She's amazing. Lisa Teasley is the author of the acclaimed novels Dive and Heat Signature and the story collection Glow in the Dark, which won the Gold Pen and Pacificus Foundation Awards. She is the writer and presenter of the BBC television documentary High School Prom. Lisa's essays, stories, and poems have appeared in many publications and have been much anthologized. She has taught writing at her alma mater, UCLA, at UC Riverside, Antioch, and CalArts, as well as at the Juvenile Hall Continuity Program through the nonprofit Spoken Interludes. Lisa has led writing workshops around the world, including Indonesia, Nigeria, and Haiti, and did a scholarship residency in China. Lisa is also the senior fiction editor at the Los Angeles Review of Books. So now it is my great honor to introduce Ms. Susan Burton and Ms. Lisa Teasley.
I'm so honored to be here with the heroic Susan Burton. I thought we could start with you telling us about just one woman, a recent story about one woman that you're helping through a new way of life. You know, what's happening with her right now?
That brings to mind a young woman named Selena.
Mm-hmm.
She is a Latina woman, about 23, 24 years old, and she just got her 3-year-old son awarded back to her on Thursday from the courts.
Wow.
And I can remember Selena coming to a new way of life, and she not having any sort of sense of self.
Right.
And, you know, I asked her the other day at morning meditation what was her dreams for her life when she got to a new way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Miss Susan, I didn't have any. I was just like empty. I didn't know I had been through so much. And this is a 23-year-old woman.
Right.
And she said, being here gave me so much back and so much that I never had before.
Right.
And she's just been just on it, going to all of her classes, participating in church, participating in recovery. She has a, you know, just everything, and she got her child back. And so we have a bouncing little 3-year-old around the house now.
That's fantastic.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Throughout the book, at the beginning of each chapter, there are the most incredible statistics about the number of women who are imprisoned for incredible misdemeanors that can then be assigned as a felony, and the cycle of recidivism, and the laws around imprisonment, and basically, you know, what Angela Davis has coined the industrial complex of the prison system, particularly here in California. And I was thinking about that a lot. I don't know if you saw this documentary called Breaking the Cycle that was about a Norwegian prison warden coming to the U.S. to look at the state of the prison system here. I thought about that while you were in the Alaska prison.
Yes.
Which was, many steps above
Yes.
California.
Very different
I
from
wonder if you could
California.
talk a little bit about just that difference, your experience in the Alaska prison.
I was first in prison in Alaska, and there I was able to go to school, and the food was much better. The environment was a friendly environment. It wasn't an environment of steel and concrete. There were big picture windows that you could look out in sunlight that you could get, and you could go out in the summer. The winters were really too cold, especially
Right.
coming from California. We had decent food compared to being in the California jail and prison system. The way in which we were just kind of stacked in there on top of each other.
Right.
No sunlight, concrete, really harsh guards, and demeaning a way in which you were treated.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that I dealt with my loss and my son's death with what was available in our communities. I didn't know about grief. I didn't know about loss. And I walked my son home from school one day, and then I'm in the house cooking dinner, and the next thing I know, he's hit by a policeman, and he's dead, and I have to deal with it. I feel like there could have been a better investment in our communities. First of all, that we would have a victim's place, a victim's services that I could have went to
Right.
to get counseling, to get support, to learn how to deal with such a tragic loss. But the response that I got when I did begin to use alcohol and drugs was so harsh,
Right.
so unthoughtful, so cruel.
Yes.
So many times I was arrested, and I went before court, and I was arrested for drugs. It was the beginning of the war on drugs. Our communities were just saturated with the stuff. And, I succumbed to use it as an escape. But the way the courts dealt with it just was so ineffective, so cruel, and so harsh. I remember taking the newspaper with my mother's picture in it, the LA Times, into the court with me one time. It was in the holding cell,
Right.
and they're taking me to court, and I see my mother's picture, and I read the article, and she's cutting on the light where my son was killed.
Right.
And I take it in and I show it to the judge, and I show it to my attorney, and I
Right.
said, isn't there any help for me? This is what happened, and it's right in the paper, so that's
Right.
evidence. I was still sent to prison.
Yeah.
And years later, after many prison terms, I would cycle in and out, in and out, in and out. I found a recovery home in Santa Monica, and I write about it, in the book, that there in Santa Monica, all the resources, were just so plentiful.
Right.
It was just, and I began to take those, I began to partake in those resources.
Right.
I went to therapy every week.
Right.
I went to 12-step meetings. I actually visited the Norwegian prison that you're talking about last year.
Really?
And I picked up a 20-year chip for my sobriety in
Wow.
Norway
Wow.
last year. But everything that I needed to address the trauma of my childhood, the loss and grief of my son, and all that I went through, I was able to address that and come back to the community stronger, healthier, clearer,
Right.
and committed to fight for my life,
Right.
committed to not go back, and to being the best person that I could be.
Right.
And that led me to creating a new way of life, because what I experienced in Santa Monica, it needed to be in South LA.
Right.
And it started in my I got a little house, saved money and got a little house, and it started there. And that's where a new way of life reentry project was created.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the legal clinic that you helped to establish
Yes.
with Saul and
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
attorneys like Josh
Yes.
to attack the legislation
Yes. And the
that
practices
and
and
the practices.
yeah. So Saul,
So
who I met at the community coalition, he was a professor. He left the community coalition and went to be a professor at UCLA.
mm-hmm.
He first introduced me to community organizing
Mm-hmm.
and building power to make change.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was got to teaching law at UCLA, there was a partnership grant that came out, and I applied for it, and I got the grant, and that allowed me to have legal interns in the office.
Mm-hmm.
So Joshua Kim was our first intern, and I can remember him plowing through the law books, digging through the law books. And he came over to my desk and he says, "This is a law on the books that's not being applied." And it was about people with criminal records, Title VII, and their right to have certain protections under Title VII.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know what it all meant, and I'm like, okay. But he built out of the office a legal expertise that we now practice in South LA and in Long Beach. We have post conviction relief for thousands and thousands of people. We give them free expungements, and we'll help them get a license if they're denied a license by any licensing board,
Mm-hmm.
if they're denied because of a criminal record.
Right.
And we have sort of attacked the background check companies that
Right.
give bad background check information to employers and other people, because if I get my record expunged and you are showing me to have a record when I apply for a job and a background check is done, that's illegal. That's bad information. So
Right.
we're trying to reinforce that people who are trying to rebuild their lives and they go back to school and they get skills that they're able to have employment,
Right.
and not discriminated against, because it's all the people that we incarcerated, and we continue to incarcerate. There's a prescribed amount of time that we give to pay back that debt, pay for the crime.
Right.
But as it is, you never are able to pay it back.
Right.
It's like, say you go and you charge up $15,000 on your credit card,
Mm-hmm.
and you pay the whole credit card off.
Mm-hmm.
But next month, it tells you that you have accrued interest,
Mm-hmm.
but you've paid it off.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
I pay my credit card off every month, by the way, because I don't want any interest. I don't want any interest, right? But it's questionable, too, some of the things that we're locking people up for.
Right.
And then to have continual punishment for it
Mm-hmm.
is a bit much.
And that was a 7-year fight, wasn't it? The lawsuit
Yes.
against the background check
IntelliCorp.
company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's no easy process.
It's no easy
And
process.
if you could tell the audience as well about Ban the Box,
Yes.
about that
Yeah.
triumph, but that was also a
Yeah.
long,
Yeah.
long
So in
fight.
2003, a group of us got together and began to look at our experience across the state. And, we were all having the same experience: job discrimination, housing discrimination, inability to get our children back out of the Department of Children and Family Services,
Right.
um, what I want to say, clutches.
Mm-hmm.
And we said what's the most important. We all voted. It was about 40 of us at the Center for Third World Development up in San Francisco. We all came
Right.
together and did a little gathering there. Not quite a conference, just a
Right.
little gathering. I
Right.
remember we were so poor and we were so broke. We were sleeping everywhere in that big house.
Yes.
Um, and jobs was the most important piece.
Mm-hmm.
And we all voted. Jobs came first, housing came second, and then children came. And we said we would all come back to our communities and fight to end the discrimination of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And that box that says, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor or by a military court?" on all the job applications, we set out to take that box off of applications. And
Right.
so we launched a campaign called Ban the Box, and it swept the country.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear before the President Obama left office, he talked about banning the box on federal applications. That was like, wow, a couple of ragtag, formerly incarcerated people got together at the Center for Third World Development, and we launched this campaign.
Yes.
And now the president's talking about ban the box.
Right.
That was big for us. It was like a moment of, oh man, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, since so many women in prison have been sexually abused, what you think about the Me Too movement, and how have you seen the women that you work with? Have they been galvanized by the movement, or?
So the Me Too movement. Well, let me go back a bit. Let me go
Mhm.
back. So 67% of women have said yes. Of women incarcerated have yes, I've been sexually abused. I was sexually abused sometime in their lifetime.
Right.
That's the ones that are able to say it. So I would suggest that the numbers are much higher than the
Mhm.
67%.
Mhm.
And I too, as a little girl, I went through so much molestation and rape, trauma, and different types of violence.
Mhm.
Um, when the Me Too movement hit, I was like, yes, yeah, well, me too. But you know, we haven't been galvanized for that. We
Mhm.
haven't been recognized as
Mhm.
being a part of
Mm.
that sector of
Mhm.
our nation, of our community.
Mm.
I think it's kind of more geared toward the, of course, the industry,
Mhm.
but maybe upper class working women that are not the poor or the incarcerated women or whatnot.
Right.
But
Right.
I've come to this place where I look at how this country addresses violence and the trauma of certain communities
Mhm.
um, and women,
Mhm.
and it ends up that our response to our experiences becomes criminalized.
Mhm.
Whether it's mental health
Right.
or substance abuse,
Right.
it becomes criminalized.
Right.
And it becomes criminalized at a really high cost to our country that, and it's never resolved through our systems,
Right.
through our government systems, through our social service systems, it's never resolved. And we must create a different approach to that. And that's what I've tried to do at A New Way of Life,
Right.
is create a safety, safe houses for women to be in, to
Right.
heal from all of that, and to begin to know their worth, their value, and their purpose. You know, with the book, I also raised money to print books for women inside of prisons. And part of my tour, like next week, I'll be in Rochester, and I'll be going to a prison in the area. I'm doing a judicial conference there, and I'm going to a prison in the area. And I raised money to print 11,000 books for women inside of prisons because I felt like they needed to read this book.
Absolutely.
And they needed to understand that there is life after incarceration. But you have to be willing to fight for your life. And whatever that means for that woman, she needs to be able to fight by making better choices, by whatever it is she needs to do. And I want to read the letter that I
Please do.
put in the front of the book for the prison edition copy. It says, "Dear friend, for many, many years I was caught up in America's prison system. I often wondered as I lay in my cell at night if I would ever break free and if my life would ever change. For too long it seemed it never would. Each time I was released, I struggled to find a better path for myself to break the cycle of misery and incarceration. But then I would find myself back in prison once more. I wrote this book to tell a story of my journey, not only to freedom, but also to passion and purpose. I hope my story will help you realize how truly valuable your life is and inspire you to think about how you can create a life after prison that is full of meaning and dignity. I want you to know that there are no throwaway people. Your life matters." The final time I was released from prison, I was at last able to get the help that I needed and begin to put my life together. I know that most incarcerated people, especially women, are survivors of not only poverty, but also of violence and abuse. With help, I was able to understand this and begin to forgive myself for some of the hurts, forgive myself for some of the choices, disappointments, and hurts. Importantly, I also began to understand the larger forces that affected me and my entire family. And with this awareness, in turn, led to my political awakening, which grounds and sustains me today. Whatever our personal experiences may be, we must all be willing to fight for the right to be the best that we can be. I know it's not easy, but I also know from the many ups and downs of my own life that it can be done. I know that it is possible to fight for yourself, to love yourself, and to find a way up and out. I pray and hope that you enjoy my book and that it helps you imagine and ultimately achieve a new and different life for yourself. So I invite you to join me in the nationwide struggle for the full restoration of the civil and human rights of all formerly incarcerated people. And I end by saying I'm rooting for you with all of my heart. Sincerely, Miss Burton. So the first prison that I went into with the book was a prison in called Tutwiler Prison in Montgomery, Alabama. And so I went in and I did the book reading, and a woman sat down with me at a table, the little steel tables with the 4 little seats on it that they have in the prisons. And so I asked her, I said, "When are you coming home?" And she said, "I'm not." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I was sentenced to 999 years, 99 months, and 99 days for drug trafficking." She said, "I was riding through Alabama on a train and got caught with drugs and got convicted, and that's my sentence." And I couldn't believe it. This little black woman, 71 years old, been in prison 15 years on a drug charge. And she'll die there if something doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And this is during a time when we're saying that opioid drug use, we need to deploy resources to help people with their addiction. And it's just such a different approach.
Yeah.
So I'm working with the University of Alabama, and I've been in touch with Brian Stevenson to see what can be done for her. But there's no clemency process in the state of Alabama.
Mm.
So it's going to be a journey.
Mm-hmm.
But she can't fight for her life. So
Right.
I have to do something. We have to do something out here as a community.
Right.
So, yeah. So when I go in, I see so much, and I'm like, compared to Norway
Mm-hmm.
and Sweden and
Mm-hmm.
Norway and Finland. I went to Norway
Mm.
and Finland. What we do here is so barbaric.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so barbaric. And last month I went to Lisbon. What they do for people who are illegal drug use,
Mm-hmm.
they send them before a social worker, a doctor, and a psychiatrist.
Wow. Yeah.
And they see the level of treatment or support that this person needs, and they send them there. This is what the state does.
Right.
I'm like, we got it backwards.
Yes. So where do you find how it's a tireless fight that you have been fighting? Where do you find the motivation? Can you look back in your childhood and in hindsight, is there a place where you can see that there was that spark of motivation to help others in this amazing and tremendous way that you have been doing for so many years now?
I think it comes from a level of gratitude that, I could be Geneva Cooley. It's just the way the chips fell. And, I want to see a better world.
Right.
I want to see women with opportunity, not harmed,
Right.
understanding their place, their power, and their value in the world. I mean, everybody has value, and sometimes the experiences that you have as you trying to get through life can kind of thwart that value and push
Right.
it down or get you off track. And I mean, I'm just encouraged, inspired, and energized, I guess, for an old lady, to be able to do that. I mean, it's
Right.
just such an honor
Right.
and a privilege. I go into prisons where people were under the influence driving and harmed someone, and they're in prison for life, and that could have been me. And I'm grateful that it wasn't,
Right.
and showing that gratitude, spending it in a concrete way,
Right.
kind of gives me the energy and the hope that something will change.
Right. After experience so many cruel situations and so much imprisonment and being in and out, and the cycle of violence. I wonder if you could talk about a few of the kind people, such as George.
George, that's who came
the
to mind,
bondsman.
George. So I met George when I was just a teenager. And he was a Bellsbauman at the time, and he would always come and bail me out of jail. He would always tell me, encourage me. He says, "You're so smart. Why don't you go back to school?" And he would say, "You're such a good person." And he'd always find good and encouraging things to say about me. And he was always there for me, never judging me, never putting me down, always giving me a hand up. And so we've maintained our relationship. What's been, wow, 50 years now, telling on myself. So he was always there, always helping me when I was in Alaska, when I was in Ohio, and even here, always being there. He's been consistent. And then my daughter, I had a daughter the day before my 15th birthday. And she is such a light in my life. And I have a granddaughter. We with her yesterday. She was a makeup artist, and she came, did makeup for a lot of the women.
Oh, wow.
We had an event, and she made us all up. We were gorgeous yesterday.
That's fantastic.
There's a woman, Marilyn Montenegro, that helped me when I first started out. And then Saul, who taught me community organizing. When he taught me that, it was all over. I know how to get power together now and go and talk to legislators, or create a community that supports someone when they are going through different issues and different problems. But there's been some bad folks, but there's been some good folks too who have helped to hold me up and hold others up.
Right.
Yes.
But you have been active in a number of coalitions, such as Not Us.
All of us are
All
none.
of Us Are None.
All of us are none,
If
yeah.
you could tell the audience.
Yeah,
about
that's
that.
when we came out of the Center for Third World Development.
Okay.
We established local chapters called All of Us Are None. And All of Us Are None is the mechanism by which we organize the formerly incarcerated voice and make change, policy changes, procedural changes, or different changes at the local level. So we've launched some legislation. We got food stamps back for people who, in California, if you were convicted of a drug charge, you could never get food stamps. Once you got out of prison or jail, you were banned from food stamps for the rest of your life. And those are, when I got out of prison, that was for people who were convicted after 1996. So when I got out of prison, I needed food stamps. I needed them for a period of time, and one of the proudest days in my life is when I walked into the county office and gave the lady the EBT card back and told her I no longer needed the support. I was working. But for a period of time, I needed those food stamps, and people with a drug charge could not get food stamps, and we fought that legislation under All of Us or None.
Right.
And then the Bat in the Box was under All of Us or None. We do voting rights under All of Us or None. We are now about to go into we're organizing people to go into jails and register people who are being held there that are eligible to vote, so that they'll be able to vote when it comes time. I mean, this is just good stuff to do. Last year we had some legislation to restore the right to serve on a jury, because I can never serve on a jury for the rest of my life the way the law is now. And I know people don't like to serve on juries, but I think I'd like to put my little 2 cents in there. I think that I would be a good jury member. I want our community safe. I don't want anybody not to be held accountable but there's other solutions than just imprisonment also.
Right.
And then how does a person from, say, Watts, where I live, get a jury of their peers when all their peers have been over-policed and over-arrested?
Right.
Yeah. Women are the fastest growing segment of the prison system, and it's the only thing a lot of communities have left is their women, and it's just such a more effective way to be able to bring women back into the community and support, them and their families and what have you. So that's my mission. That's what I do. That's my purpose. That's it.
I really appreciate your story. I have a daughter who's going to prison. Anyways, it's just inspiring to see you here.
Where's your daughter?
California State. She was just transferred from county. And so it's like a 3-year sentence. But that's a big deal for me.
Yeah.
And I've, sole custodial parent. I just don't think it's an accident that I came to see you today.
All right.
I got it together, but I just had a couple questions on what you were sharing. Okay. You mentioned something about a prison edition. Does that differ from the regular edition of the book?
It is different.
Is it censored or?
No. The prison edition has the letter that I read in the front of it. In the back of it, it has a workbook for each chapter. But other than that, it's the identical book. And it's soft cover because you can't send hard covers into prisons.
Oh.
And I didn't know, at what point the publishing company was going to print a soft cover. And I just thought it was an important book for women to read on the inside. So I made the special edition soft cover. And that's anyone out there that has someone who they'd like to receive a book, just put that number in and we'll ship them a book.
Just one last thing. I just want to say I really appreciate your interest in jury rights of convicted felons who seem truly like peers.
Yeah.
And your interest in the First Amendment, and I just think that's applaudable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you've done. Just one question. You ever think of running for president?
Those people don't get nothing done. I need to get stuff done.
Hi. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your program and the homes and what kind of services are offered there and what kind of, if you have social workers or occupational therapists or what kind of people you have helping out.
Yeah. So the homes are single family homes and there's 2 people per bedroom. 8 o'clock in the morning, we start our day with a morning meditation. And we read from the, I think it's the Hazelden book for recovering women. And each day it has some type of life advice that we reflect on and set goals for the day. And it's an agreement. It's a must. You come to morning meditation unless you're sick or you're at work. So we have 2 homes that are staffed with a social worker, a housing coordinator, and another staff person. She usually cooks or something like that. So they cook the evening meal and people go for themselves. The women go for themselves for breakfast and lunch. There's a 10 o'clock curfew, and we have a calendar with a lot of events on there, from financial literacy to All of Us and None meetings, to conferences and city council meetings and what have you, and we expose the women to all types of different activities. They're not here with me today because they have a group that was coming in and doing a brunch with them. We go to 12-step meetings. We have a therapist on staff. We have our own Dr. Phil. He comes every Thursday, and whoever wants to see him can see him. If I see someone who is stuck someplace, I will highly encourage them to have an appointment with Dr. Phil and just see if he's helpful to them. And when I say highly encouraged, that means that you're going. Sometimes we just don't know what's good for us, but so it's like if you don't want to go again, if you don't want to, then okay, I'm not going to make you. But that time, if they're stuck, if they're having behavior or crying or depressed or what have you, go sit down and talk this through with Dr. Phil if you don't want to talk to me about it. So those 2 houses. And then we have 3 houses we call independent houses, where after the women are in the 2 houses and they've got a program going, they can go to the independent house where they're responsible, and there's 2 women to a bedroom there, or you might be a woman and a child in a bedroom, and they're responsible for their their grocery shopping, and they're responsible for their transportation to work and keeping up their appointments. But they're better established and more solid, and they've demonstrated that they have a commitment to their lives, and they go there. And those houses aren't staffed. Every now and then we come over there, but they're their homes, and they take care of them really, really well. And they have a curfew too, 10 o'clock. But they have the weekend they can go, with their families or whatever. Yeah.
Something near and dear to my heart, as we're here in the library today, is literacy.
Yes.
And no matter how many programs or papers that are going to need to be filled out, that's first. And I'm wondering if that's a terribly important part of your, just the very beginning steps of getting people to understand that they need to be able to read, and if they can't, then that needs to be first, and then they'll have the self-confidence to fill out forms and things
So
like that.
we were just talking about that earlier in the back there in the little green room. It is really, really, really important, and occasionally there'll be a woman who clearly needs some support and help with literacy. And we have Maxine Waters School that's not far from the house, and we'll enroll her in that school. But when people don't have when the women don't have a good skill of reading, you almost have to hold their hand and walk them through that fear of their shame and embarrassment around not being literate. And we do that. And that's one of the, I guess, the sweet spots of a new way of life, is that we, in a single family home like that, we are close enough that we can understand and work with each woman that's there and meet her right where she is to help her to succeed in her journey. So that is very, very important, and I have recognized it, and we have helped people with their literacy, going to school. I might have to pick her up and take her a few days myself, but that's the type of hand holding that she might need, and it's okay. So.
What are some of the things that your organization are in need of now?
We always need hygiene items and underclothes for women.
Okay.
We get a lot of donations of clothing, but you can't wear other people's underclothes.
Right.
So that's some of the things that we need for our residents.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the audience a bit about, speaking of underwear, what that was like in prison?
Oh my God. Yeah. It was like these big old thick things that almost was like diapers. Like you have baby training pants. Those were big baby training pants. And you literally would have to try to hopefully get to where you could pick through them and find the ones that were least stained. And so, yeah, that. Yeah. And that's the experience with underclothes. So we always want to give women new and clean, clean panties. Yeah,
And also
new
how you
panties,
have to
yeah.
buy tampons.
Yeah, you
in
do
the
have
prison,
yeah,
out of your little
and everything's
account.
overpriced. Everything's overpriced. I mean, you're so exploited there. You talk about capitalism and bleeding the most bleedy, I guess you would say. I mean, one of those cup of noodles might cost you $1.25 in a prison. Everything is just overpriced, and you can't go anyplace else and shop. You used to could send boxes that you could shop for in the free world, but now you have to do it all through their companies, ordering supplies and boxes. And it's really important that people are able to get some of the things that they need. Soap, the soap that we used to call it lye, because it would just, don't have psoriasis or anything. That stuff would just fry your skin. So I hope that you're able to help your daughter while she's there with hygiene items and tennis shoes, because the boots that they have you wear up there just really harms your feet for the long haul. Yeah, it's just things you don't think about that are that has a person feeling and living almost like an animal.
And then the wages
Yeah.
that you make there,
I made
the-
8 cents an hour. I made
8
8 cents
cents
an hour
an hour.
on a chicken farm, feeding and killing chickens. And if I didn't go to work, I'd have to stay in prison another day. They called it an 8-day. So when they say slave labor, they mean slave labor.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
When you were in recovery, what were some of the, or how did you deal with the negative thoughts that would come to you, and so like that would hold you back when you were trying to, recover?
So when I got to the place in Santa Monica, I was so hopeless. And when I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, there was so much hope and so much that I heard that, it filled me with the desire to strive for more. And so I went to meetings at 7 a.m. in the morning, 12 p.m. noon, and again at 7 at night. So I stayed in meetings, and I didn't have a lot of idle time to entertain any thoughts or fears. And, that meditation book that we read every morning, I carried one in my purse with me. And when I was on public transportation, I would take it out and read it. And I remember different pages. There's one page that says that, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And it was things like that that I pulled out and would work with and you know, help me shape the way I spend my days, my time, and my thoughts. And sometimes, you know, thoughts come today, and I'll be saying, like, thank you for sharing, but I'm doing this here. You know. And then also, I got a community of positive people around me that I could call and I could share a thought or a doubt that was kind of haunting me in my head. So, I mean, recovery is work, but to not be in recovery. Recovery is work with good results, but to not be in recovery is more work with worse results because it worked me.
How are women able to join your program, or how does it work to
Yeah.
become a part of it?
So they write to me. I'm getting letters from all over the country now, but they write to me and they give me their release date, and I pick them up at the downtown bus station or at Linwood Jail or at CIW when they're released. Myself or a staff member, mostly staff members do it now. But it's a self-referral, you know. So our relationships are kind of personal, and I think we getting away from that a bit now in the field. And they write and I write back. No one writes a letter to me that I don't answer. And then it goes from there. So I can always come back and say, isn't this your letter? Didn't you say you wanted to do this? Has anything changed? Yeah.
Yes.
It's, occasionally I'll take a referral from a agent, but most of the time they write to me. Yeah.
What's the biggest goal for the organization right now? What's the biggest challenge that you all are facing right now?
Well, we always are trying to raise more resources, but one of the realities is that a new way of life is a model that works, and it's with people who have been there and done that, myself and others in the agency, and I want to replicate it. People have been reaching out to me from all over the nation asking me, you know, how to. And I'm trying to design a replication model that I can help people to establish the model. We're calling it safe houses.
Right.
For women to be able to have a place to come back to get involved in their communities and stay out of prisons.
Right. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what about some of the men that you have been in contact with who have been in prison? Are they helping or the organization at all? Do you have some men besides the legal?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have the legal clinic. Well, there's only one man attorney. All of them are women.
Okay.
But you know, we have a community of people who are helping and understanding and respecting one another. And I can remember the first opening up, and there were some guys from the recovery meeting that came in and put all the beds together. I have a friend that actually painted the houses. A friend of mine's son came in and painted the houses, so that was good too. But so it's a community of folks helping one another.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful place to end.
Yeah.
So Susan is going to be signing books out there, and I hope everyone here will get a book because it is the most amazing read. It's her life's journey is so remarkable that there are no words really to express. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this conversation.
Thank you.